George, thanks for being here. Maybe just to kick things off, if you could introduce yourself and Voda, and for people who may not be as familiar with predictive AI and water networks, what does Voda do, and how's the product being used by your customers?
Thank you, Chris. I'm George Demosthenous, CEO at Voda.ai. Voda.ai is a SaaS platform that helps water engineers who target underground high-risk water assets. These are assets that they can't see, but they still have to accurately target. Our solutions include risk modeling for mains and service lines and laterals for potable and wastewater, as well as identification of lead and galvanized service lines for inventory buildup, and identifying meters that have a high probability of being inaccurate, where utilities lose revenue, or being stuck, which can cause a lot of customer support issues.
Mm. I think risk modeling can be a little bit opaque to customers sometimes because you're building your own sort of models to analyze risk of failure in the network. But I'm curious, what sort of second order behaviors do you see Voda enacting within utilities? After you're running your analysis on a network, what are some of the immediate next actions that you see your customers making based on that data?
Yeah. So it all starts with data. We take the data from the utility, we include publicly available data as well as proprietary data. We go through a cleaning process, which is almost 100% automated now. And then our AI engine, Da Vinci, runs on top of all that data and looks for patterns that led to previous failures. That's how it learns from those patterns. And then it predicts the probability of the next asset that will likely fail. Now, that's very valuable for utilities, but that alone is not enough. So we have created tools for CIP and operations where utilities can create projects that will have the highest risk of potential failure so that they can allocate their capital where it matters. One example is, say, Public Works or DOT calls the utility and says, we're resurfacing a road in 2 weeks. Would you like to replace your pipe? Now, that pipe or that stretch of pipe hasn't been budgeted, so it's a sort of an emergency decision, if you will. Traditionally, utilities would have looked at the age and determine whether to change it or not. Now, if they don't change it, in many cases, there are moratoriums where there is a fine if the pipe breaks within X amount of time, say 5 years. So in most cases, if a pipe, say, is over 60 years old, the utility will take the hit and go change the pipe, which may cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, in this case, with Voda.ai, they go on the platform, they look at the probability of that stretch of pipe failing in the next 5 or 10 years. And if the probability is low, they take their chances, save that money, and allocate it on other pipes or other assets that have a much higher risk of failure.
Yeah, I think that's so important with so many utilities not being able, to increase their CapEx spending so much. They have to get more out of their operating expenses. And it seems like, you're really freeing up a lot of capital in that part of, utilities cost structure to go, get more ROI out of their investments. Otherwise, there's a lot of money there that's just being held for a rainy day, a pipe bursting, which they know is going to happen throughout the year. And so, those are obviously very expensive maintenance actions. And so I think, Voda is really freeing up the budgets for a lot of utilities. We talk a lot about how much funding there is available and how great the need is and how those things are really driving the market. But sometimes those trends can be unreliable too. And so I think it's those are great tailwinds for the business as you're coming to market with the product. But I think, what utilities will really appreciate over a long period of time is how you're really unlocking their budgets for them and allowing them to get a heck of a lot more out of their spend. And I think, for the funding that is out there, even for the politicians that are voting on those things and writing those bills, just knowing that whatever funding that they are laying out for utilities and other water infrastructure providers giving them confidence that that funding will have a return, I think is really important. So, I think we've been really impressed with the way that Voda, is actually encouraging our customers to spend more money because they know that they'll get returns out of that capital, and they're okay taking on, those costs or whatever it may be to spend the funding. And everybody benefits in that way. That's how economies grow. That's how cities that don't have great infrastructure can build that for the first time, or build new markets on infrastructure that they didn't have before. Those benefits really can't be understated. But the funding is certainly a topic of conversation right now when it comes to the U.S.'s IIJA funding. That'll be hopefully renewed later this year. But I'm curious, how much of an impact is that having on your business in terms of customers wanting to take a wait and see approach, or is it affecting the way you're landing and expanding with customers? How's that sort of fit into your sales process and conversations with customers when it comes to that funding being available?
Yeah. A couple things. You touched on capital investment, which is very important. Utilities want to continue to invest because we have been underinvesting globally on our infrastructure for a very long time. So that there is a finite amount of capital that utilities have to spend, and we encourage them to spend that, but they don't have to spend it on the wrong assets. So we say, hey, look at the highest risk infrastructure assets that you have, which can be identified by using the Voda platform. Invest that there, and if you have already met your non-revenue water goals, then you can take some of that money and invest it on other things that you have fallen behind, like an AMI system, for example. So there is no big incentive of spending less capital per se. It's about allocating that capital on the right places. But lowering O&M, lowering the operating expense, the OPEX, is very important because that's almost wasted money. And it's not just the big break they had and they had to send emergency crews. The more emergency crews they send, the higher the probability of a safety issue. The more emergency crews they send, the higher the support calls and the customer dissatisfaction. So there is that ROI that they get because they now have less OPEX, but also there is that increasing customer satisfaction and other softer things that our customers appreciate. But to your question about funding, we have, as part of our analytics, a chart that shows the remaining useful life for assets year by year for the next 100 years. What's great about that is that utilities can look at that for the next, say, 10 years, and they'll know how much capital they need to invest to maintain either the same break rate or non-revenue water, or bring that down to a certain level. You can even put the goal that you have, lower my non-revenue water by X, Y, or Z. Well, what our customers do, what our utility partners do, is they take that chart, which is coming from a third-party unbiased company, and present it to regulators or boards to get funding, or even raise their rates when they have to. So there are many benefits of using data to drive decisions.
Well, I mean, it's no mystery that customers have really fallen in love with Voda, and I'd love to know more about those customers, your power users. When Voda's really well integrated into a utility, are there any sort of behavior changes that you're seeing, or just new behaviors, customers being more strategic with where they're deploying Voda, or making sure that they have a Voda analysis before they do any capital project? But when people are using Voda at its best, what do you think that type of utility looks like?
Yeah. So within each utility partner, we have several types of users. Some of them may be in engineering, where they care more about planning. Some may be in operations, where they care more about where do I place my leak detection sensors so that they are more effective. Because in most cases, most utilities, there are exceptions, but most utilities don't have enough funding to deploy sensors at 100% of their network. So say they have enough funding for 20%. Knowing where to deploy that 20% on those assets that have the highest likelihood of failure is making the not only planning work better, but also operations more effective. So traditionally, utilities would, on the planning side, would reach out to their operations people out in the field and say, hey, we have $20 million to spend next year, and we need help trying to determine which pipes do we replace, which pipes do we do leak detection, condition assessment, and so on and so forth, so that we can create the plans and give them to you, to your teams to work on. Now things have changed. Once our utility partners are fully onboarded, they will take the predictions that DaVinci comes up with, and we have tools that they can use to create projects. They can do it 100% automated, or they can select, hey, we want to work on this neighborhood, start here, and give me the most ROI, the most bang for my buck. So once they create those projects, then they package them, send them for approval, and the decision now is made based on data which predicts the future versus information that they had from their operations teams that usually looks at the past. It looks at the past because they look at which pipes failed in the past, as well as the age and some other things. For us, because we use that, and we think that's very important to use the insights from operations, but you should add a lot of other things like type of soil, weather patterns, proximity to railroads, and so on and so forth. So combining all of those is helpful, and increasingly utilities, whether on the engineering team or the OPEC operations team, are using tools instead of intuition.
Yeah, I think you're giving people a real sort of holistic lens into the infrastructure and what goes on around their water networks that are all out of sight for anyone to monitor. And I think it's why you've built such a great sort of decision support engine for these customers, where they are now being more strategic, and it just comes from, I think, a great product team that you guys have, and really caring about those nuances that go on for your customer. So, so naturally, I want to know what's next. We're here at the start of 2026, but any plans that you have for the company or the product, or sort of where you're going to market, whether it's over this year or next year, that you want to share?
Yeah. Thanks for the kind words. The team did do a great job delivering solutions that are powerful yet easy to use. Most of our features and functionality, since we went to market back in 2018, have come from customers. They were customer requests, pain points that worked their way through our internal process, and we delivered them. Now this is the first time we are working on things that are bleeding edge again, just like back in 2017 when we started working on this hypothesis, which was, if there is data, there should be signal. If there is signal, we should be able to provide value. And that's how we started Voda.ai. Now we're expanding our AI capabilities. We started with machine learning and pattern recognition. We're expanding to generative AI and are working on agents, because we believe that while the water market may seem like it's a little bit slower to adapt certain technologies, and that's natural, it's a monopolistic market, there is no competition, so it takes time for utilities. Engineers are smart, they want others to technologies out before they use them. But in this case, we are betting that AI agents will help water utilities free a lot of their engineering time, because there aren't enough engineers to do all of the work that has to be done. And we think that these agents can help them be more productive, faster, and unlock a lot of additional potential. So later this year and next, we're going to be releasing agents, and we believe that our customers will really love them.
Yeah, I think you're, not just serving a huge need, but really sort of leveling up the, the quality of the operation at utilities and engineers. We saw the American Society of Civil Engineers came out with their U.S. infrastructure report last year, and they noted that less than 30% of U.S. utilities have any sort of asset management platform. So there's a huge need in the market that I think Voda's filling, and then you've built such a great product that now it's even going beyond just filling a need and creating real behavior change in a way that is really helping our customers. So we've had a lot of fun getting to know Voda and the team and the product that you've built, and we're just as excited for the agent platform and all the things that you guys are building that we look forward to sharing in the future. But here's to building the next great water infrastructure. Thanks,
Great.
George.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.